Hello, friends. This is Pastor Christopher Maronde, the director of the Lutheran Institute of Regenerative Agriculture. And we've been having such a ball this year bringing you all these webinars with different voices, some from within kind of the Lutheran tribe, so to speak, and a number of voices from the outside as well. And we've been such an enjoyable experience for me personally to get to talk to so many different people talking about farming itself, rural community, and all the topics that go around it. So it's really been a joy. I hope you guys have been enjoying these webinars, and I pray that you would share them, pass them along, see who else might be interested in learning more about these topics. Today, I'm very excited to have Mike Thomas. He's of the Catholic Land Movement, and I'm trying to think, it's maybe two or three different people have gotten in touch with me since we've launched this project and said, have you heard of the Catholic Land Movement? Have you checked these guys out? Because they seem to be doing at least something similar to in the Catholic confession to what you're trying to do in the Lutheran confession. And so I checked out their website. I got in touch with Mike, and we're very, very glad to have him here tonight to unpack and explain what the Catholic Land Movement is, and talk more generally about agriculture and as the basis for community and especially rural communities. So, Michael, thank you very much for being with us tonight.
No, thank you, Christopher, for giving the both myself and the Catholic Land Movement the platform to talk about what we're doing. I'm happy to be here and grateful to have the opportunity to talk.
Well, let's start out by introduce yourself. Let the audience kind of know a little bit about you personally, and then there's no need for me to ask another question. How about go from that, launch right into what the Catholic. If you could summarize the Catholic Land Movement in the elevator speech of just a couple minutes, and then we'll unpack that as the interview goes on.
Yeah, great. So I'll take the first bite there, which is me. People most often know me from my social media presence, which is Michael Thomas of Sharon. It's a Twitter presence. I talk about a whole range of issues there. Forgive me, the breadth that I cover, but I speak quite a bit there. And so I am a father of five, a traditional Catholic, and by that I mean I participate in the ancient liturgy of the Usus Antiquitor, and I try and uphold traditional Catholic social teaching, and then I am a farmer. My farming and agricultural life tends to exist in the realm of homesteading. And I define that as, that my primary needs are met first by my participation with the landscape rather than market service. No besmirchment either way. It's just that's what I am. I'm mostly a homesteader. I do have a little over 1,000 apple trees, which is my main crop. There's a dream one day that those apple trees become, something that could participate with some form of market or exchange or community, system. But it's as of yet, they're like 8 years old, so they're not at full production. Again, father of five, husband, farmer. I use a lot of techniques that people would understand as traditional. I tend to steer away in my land management practice of any pigeonholed nomenclature or vernacular that's developed, right? I was witnessed in the 90s and early 2000s the permaculture thing, and then it was organic, and then it was regenerative or whatever it is, and I just kind of I'm most comfortable with either a traditional farming technique or what I call integrated farming technique, and that just basically means animals on your farm, crops and animals integrated in a system in a single farm. And so that is that's me in a nutshell professionally. I work in construction. I do, I'm not going to get too much into that, but professionally that's what I do. So I have a professional life as well, and And yeah, politically, I tend to fall on or socially, I tend to fall on like that traditionalist. And I think we'll get into this as we talk about the Catholic land movement, but the reactionary frame of, within the contemporary political set. And so, that's who I am in a nutshell. So that's the first phase, the first bite of the question that you posed. And then the second bite would be, what is the Catholic land movement? And how does that tie in with who I am and some of the ideas I've already laid out in that brief little spiel. So the Catholic land movement in its contemporary set is a restoration effort. So the Catholic land movement is a restoration effort of a movement that occurred in England about 100 years ago. And it was a movement in reaction to the consolidating forces of industrialism and kind of the onset of what we would understand as like global economy, the post World War One consolidation into urban life, industrialism, and what we understand as like modern republics. And so that all happened, and there was a group of people in England who, witnessing the Russian reaction to that consolidation in communism, said, "Whoa, the reaction to this can really go off the rails, and we want to make sure that we are answering as Catholics with a reaction to the contemporary set that speaks to our virtue, that speaks to history, that speaks to us as Catholics." And there was a lot of thinkers, social theorists, writers of that period that were dealing with this issue of consolidation, industrial consolidation and urban consolidation. And Pope Leo XIII, Chesterton, Hilaire Belloc, these are all kind of like three standout intellectuals of that time who were dealing with these issues and how they related to the Catholic experience. And so the Catholic land movement is the practical expression of what those kind of thinkers and social theorists and writers were churning out. There was a priest in England by the name of Father Vincent McNabb, who helped give form to a practical expression of reaction to industrial consolidation around the idea that the homestead and the family is the most base unit of society. So there's inherently this reaction to the liberal expression of the individual being the base unit of society, and that society is grounded in some like Bill of Rights sort that is bonded together by individuals, right? That family and the natural order of society is actually the base unit, and the best way to ensure the kind of natural and inherent freedom and rights of the family is to have them grounded in landscape and homesteading, or producing, getting the elimination of poverty was not the production of something that the state would mediate, be it a currency or a social system, but by actually bringing and doing that through the fruitful cultivation of productive property. And so this is going back to Pope Leo XIII's encyclical of kind of having a social order that steps out of being the medium from the productive cultivation of private property. And so we have the Catholic land movement is born, and the Catholic land movement it grows into about 6 demonstration farms in England. Those 6 demonstration farms are homestead incubators. Those incubators teach and reconnect people with practical skills. They offer people the opportunity to engage in what you and I, Christopher, would probably understand as like internships now. They call them farm placements. So if I was looking to like get out of my situation of existence in like an urban setting where I was bound to some factory somewhere, I had an option by contacting the Catholic land movement and saying, "Hey, do you have a farm placement for me?" They'd bring you to one of their demonstration farms, and then they would like help you cultivate from one of the homesteads that they incubated a farm placement, which would train you, and then that would incubate your own farm, and the kind of the natural order of things would unfold. It was very successful. It grew to about 10,000 different homesteads and 6 demonstration farms across England. And then eventually it kind of met it met World War II, quite frankly, and World War II and the decimation of Europe at that point broke up the Catholic land movement, more or less. I mean, there's other factors. I could talk about it for a while, but there's fastidious historians who would probably debate me on a various points. But the overall scope, the 30,000 or 3,000 mile view, is that the Catholic land movement, very successful, growing, fails to kind of gain diocesan support in the Catholic hierarchy, fails to gain kind of funding from bishops, but still is a powerful movement amongst the laity, and then somewhat fizzles out at the onset and throughout the duration of World War II. Then post that, we have the ascendancy of Americanism and American industrialism and the whole post-war period, which is a whole thing. I'm not going to get into it. But now in the contemporary set, we see a very similar consolidation of power, capital, property in global technocracy. So we are witnessing, and we are part of right now, a social current that is where the consolidated power centers are sweeping us towards a type of technocratic globalism, and people in their hearts and in their minds and are reacting to that. They're saying, yeah, this doesn't feel right. It manifests itself in all types of ways, and you and I could probably identify a 100 ways in this course of this discussion of how that's manifesting. And why it is, and dig into it. But suffice to say that impulse of discernment of this isn't right seeks a home, and the Catholic land movement is finding a restoration in that seeking. So myself and a few other people a couple years ago said, we're reading McNabb, we're reading Chesterton, we're reading Belloc, and we're reading Pope Pius Pope Leo the 13th, and we're on and on and on. We're reading all these people, and eventually, it's like, what are we going to do? We have to do something. A bit tired of theory and a bit tired of army, much in the spirit of Father Vincent McNabb, who was always calling people to action rather than theory. It was like a key component to his rhetoric and polemic, was always calling people to simple action. And works, how do we work these things into our experience as Catholics and people? How do we these big ideas of distributism or homesteading, or back to the land, how do we work primary skills, or the cultivation of traditional skills, and how do we work these things back into a workable practicality? Father Vincent McNabb was constantly driving in that. And so the Catholic land movement in the contemporary set is trying to reestablish that very hey, let's do something about these things. The same consolidation we witnessed at industrialism, we're witnessing again with global technocracy. And so the same spirit is moving people, the same discernment is moving people. Let's give them a form, a hierarchy, a rubric, a habit. Let's form a charism that addresses these things in the contemporary and give people action. So what does that look like? The first the first movement that we had was just a calling together in fellowship, and that was a year ago. We had a conference. We just kind of put out the word to the kind of Catholic realm through various social media channels and just broader media channels that, hey, we want to restore the Catholic land movement. Will you meet us in fellowship? And it turned out that many people wanted to do that, hundreds and hundreds of people. We sold out tickets in the first day. Our tickets are $25. It's very, very quickly were we able to fill up an entire conference and somewhat astounded the people who put out this call. Realized that, well, we're tapping into something that's resonating deeply with people across many, many different lines. This return to a simpler life, this return to homesteading, this return to a relationship with primary things resonates very deeply. There's a deep truth in it that is a powerful counter to what we experience in kind of contemporary media or modern experience. And so the first Catholic Land Movement Conference unfolded, and people really came together in fellowship. From that experience, there was kind of a discussion, and it went on for 3 days. Of the Catholic Land Movement, the first and primary focus of it, in being a reactionary movement, in being kind of like an answer to the various poisons of modernity and liberalism, it contains with it this that its primary call is the glorification of God, the truth of and witness of the Catholicism and the Catholic sacraments. It's an answer. It's an answer to liberalism, right? So at its very core, that is the first thing that it's doing, and then from there it carries on to address primary things. So through the Catholic virtues, so charity, hope, patience, diligence, the various virtues that unfold to guide our actions. We use those to orient ourselves to drive a relationship with other Catholics around primary things. Homesteading. Father Vincent McNabb has this great quote of the greatest defense of freedom is the family, and the greatest defense of the family is the homestead. Which there's just quite a. I'll probably throw out a bunch of quotes in the course of this thing. But so that's an understanding of and so actually speed it up a little bit to bring you even right to the contemporary. At post the conference, we really leaned into the historic precedent and the idea that we're a restoration movement, and we are manifesting kind of a stage of organizational structure. One is kind of cultivating in the individual families the skills of homesteading and the relationship with other families, and that primarily takes the shape of parish groups. So we establish parish chapters. A lot of parishes have like a coffee hour. They might get together for feast days. Of course, they get together for prayer and sacraments, but the introduction, and some rural parishes already have this naturally, but the introduction of the idea of like shared work days. Let's build garden boxes together. Let's build a chicken coop at this person's house, and we'll split wood at this person's house, and we'll help this guy put on his roof. And so the Catholic Land Movement tries to introduce the idea of like mutual aid work days into parish life, and putting that into like the regular schedule. And we do it through the cultivation of leadership and like a kind of hopefully eventually a formal hierarchy of organization, where it's like, okay, this person is the point person, and they're going to organize in their parish these days of like mutual aid labor. This structure leaning into the principle of subsidiarity, which is again another Catholic social teaching principle that's deeply related to. I feel like I'm moving through lots of social principles quickly, but subsidiarity is the idea that any problem that we encounter, we should kind of deal with at the lowest level of authority as possible. And so the parish chapter is addressing the needs of the community, and each parish chapter looks different, but we shouldn't scale the organization bigger than what's needed at that parish chapter level if it's addressing the needs and the concerns of the people and lifting their talents up and not burying them. So this parish chapter idea and leaning into subsidiarity and identifying leaders in parish communities, and then kind of empowering them and cultivating leadership and what's the word, initiative in them to kind of like reach out to what the needs of their community are and how they can solve them with the skills, talents, and gifts that they have. That's what the Catholic Land Movement is cultivating, and it's been wildly successful. There's like dozens and dozens and dozens of parish chapters. Those parish chapters form into regional kind of groups that interact with one another. The affiliate organizations get involved, and sometimes affiliate organizations or independently, we're seeing now the manifest of like demonstration farms. You right now usually just affiliate organizations, and so a demonstration farm leans again into the restoration of the English system. Again, England had 6 demonstration farms that served as like full-time center, that was like training people in like, how do I raise pigs? How do I butcher pigs? How do I integrate chickens into a crop or operation? How do I, no-till a field? How do I, on and on and on with all these traditional agrarian skills. And then even further than that, just like traditional vocational skills, like, right, what's timber framing, what's stone masonry? How do I, do these things? Again, always, to bring it back to the central point, always under the context and the push to glorify God in the process through the holding of Catholic sacraments. So like that's like always the baseline and the center of like what the push is with the Catholic Land Movement. And so those demonstration farms are like slowly being identified as affiliate organizations, or like somebody is saying, hey, I'm going to start this on my farm, and they're growing it. But England had 6 of these. Hopefully America will have hundreds, it looks like, hopefully. I mean, it just keeps on growing. The deluge of interest in this whole movement, right here to where I find you, Christopher, being like, hey, talk to me about this. By leaning into subsidiarity, we don't need a lot of money. We don't need a lot of, high level infrastructure. We just need fellowship and charity and diligence and persistence, and patience, continual cultivation. And we're seeing the Catholic Land Movement grow, bringing you right up to the moment in June. The end of June 23rd, 24th, and 25th, we'll have our 2nd annual conference. We're going to be talking about a strategic vision for the next year. We're going to be talking about like what we've done in the past year. Within the first 2 weeks, we sold 350 tickets. Again, like $25 a ticket. Kids are free. It's like the whole idea is like nobody's making a ton of money on this. A Catholic shrine has accepted us as pilgrims. And so they'll be just camping and kind of, masses, and priests are helping with confessions, and on and on and on and on. And so once again, it's just the interest in a conference is overwhelming. My goal and my hope to speed up and kind of give you a taste of what the strategic vision for the next year will be is to hope that we see regional conferences in the various regions, and that those regional conferences identify people who can teach workshops and who are passionate to speak about these things, who understand the mission of the Catholic Land Movement, and then bringing those people together under the vision of like, hey, you guys should start a demonstration farm, or you should participate with this affiliate organization who's already kind of doing that. You should be their workshop people. You should help them cultivate an incubation of Catholic homesteads. And so that is that's the Catholic Land Movement. That's where it is. There's probably like thousands of people participating now. It's kind of funny. Like I get a call. I spend like an hour or two. Like I'll spend this hour or two with you right now. I spend an hour or two like on the phone talking with people, and just like the emails constantly pour in. And it's funny. Like just the other day, it was on my way home from work today. I got a message from our regional leadership in the like Illinois, like Appalachian area, saying that, hey, that group that you sent me, they look like they've already built their own thing, and they're having, they're this very robust community that's doing their things. You should contact them. And he gave me their name, and it was a woman I talked to like 9 months ago. But I haven't talked to her maybe in 5 or 6 months, but apparently she was very successful in starting a whole chapter, and like a whole thing is going on, and I'm not even aware of it. And so this is the power of leaning into the model of subsidiarity, empowering people, and then just like letting them go on their mission. And then like half a year later, you come back and it's like, whoa, you built this whole thing, awesome. Let's what did you learn? What was challenging? What didn't work? What did work? And then feed that back into pollinate out to the rest of the groups. And so yeah, so there it is in a nutshell. Hope I wasn't too long-winded. How long did I take? 10 minutes, 15, 20? I don't know,
Oh,
but there it is.
that was awesome. I appreciate the detail. In fact, you answer a number of my secondary questions already. I can just leave those to the side. Thank you very much for that. Couple of comments, and then I have maybe one more question before we have to close this first half of our interview. I am immensely fascinated by the demonstration farm. Because that's essentially in our own context within our own kind of Lutheran confession. That's essentially what we're trying to build here in Southwest Iowa. That's just I'm incredibly fascinated by that concept, and the examples from England, and then what folks are doing today. Because again, that's really what we're trying to do here. In a nutshell, it sounds very similar to what
Yes.
to what to what we're doing, and we had no idea
Yeah,
that
yeah,
such a movement existed when we kind of conceived of this. You guys are
yeah.
riding the
There's a great
suit.
there's a great
Yes.
I was gonna say there's just a great quote that I like to say when I hear that, because I hear that from a lot of people of like, oh, we've already thought of this whole thing, and it's that everything that is true, good, and beautiful deserves to and will be rediscovered over and
Yeah.
over and over again. Like we're all in a process of rediscovering
Yeah.
what's true, good, and beautiful. And so there's no, if you're like, if anything that I say in this, and you're like listening along, or you or anybody else is like, oh yeah, that sounds right. That's what we're going for. Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's no mistake in that. It's
Yeah.
like it's an indication that we're on the right path, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyway, yeah.
I kind of so you're writing the tsunami. Like Joel Salatin talks about the tsunami of homesteading. It's just exploded in popularity, and so the Catholic land movement in an intentionally Catholic and intentionally confessional Christian uh context is really tapping into that larger impulse, which is affecting all sorts of my own context, Lutherans, but then people who are not Christian at all. And it's really a big deal right now. And so both what we're doing and definitely what you guys are doing is really tapping into that, but in a very specific way. And I think on the other side of the break, I might want you to unpack just a little bit more what makes the Catholic land movement Catholic, and not just another group of homesteaders. But I'll save that to the other side of the break. You've already unpacked that a little bit. I'd like to hear you say a little bit more about that. Before the break, before we conclude this first half, first of all, for those who want to learn more, kind of the theological underpinnings, when we talked on the phone a couple of weeks ago, you mentioned a few documents that I should read, a few works that I should be looking at in order to really understand where you guys are coming from. If you could list those out for our heroes, let's do that first, and then if I've got time, I'll throw out one more question.
Yeah, absolutely. So the best starting place for people who are looking to understand the kind of genesis or the origins of the Catholic land movement, the discernment from which they rise from, I'd suggest Pope Leo the 13th, or Rerum Norum. I always pronounce it. It's like doesn't come off my tongue correctly, but Pope Leo the 13th's most famous encyclical, which is dealing with Catholic understanding of property, the state, the rights of capital, the rights of labor, how all those things kind of like interact with one another. It's a beautiful encyclical. I could pull out dozens and dozens of like quotes from it that are just that do real justice and deliver real illuminating truth to this relationship to property and the state's relationship to property and the person's or the family's relationship to property and capital and labor's relationship to property and capital. So that's number one. I Good night, Edith Francis. I love you. Um, the uh, the second set is there's a whole set of writings from English writers who understood themselves as distributists. I'll focus on Chesterton and Belloc. There's a book called The Third Way. I don't know where I don't know who the publisher is. I should know it offhand, but there's a book called The Third Way that kind of collects it all in one thing. But understanding distributism, which is like the economic and kind of theological and sociological underpinnings of what grew into the Catholic land movement, and understanding that through the restoration of property by Belloc and what is it, Common Sense or Sanity by I don't know. I forget all the individual ones, but there's a great book called The Third Way that collects them in like a single thing. Maybe in between the breaks, I'll grab the book so I can flash it. But that's another great one. And then you're going to want to, if you want to understand the Catholic land movement specifically, that'll give you a theoretical foundation if you're into that. If you want to understand the Catholic land movement specifically, you're going to want to look at the Church and the Land by Father Vincent McNabb, and then Flee to the Fields, which is a collection of various essays by participants of the Catholic land movement. Both of those come from IHS Press. And it's kind of an overview of the Catholic land movement in its original manifest in England, and then speeding up to the contemporary, John Sharp, who is the editor-in-chief, owner, president, I don't know what the official title is, of IHS Press, will be giving the keynote at our conference this year, kind of wedding for me the historic Catholic land movement and the contemporary restoration effort. And so yeah, so then get participating. Father Vincent McNabb just has a beautiful an endless amount of beautiful quotes where he's just saying, like, we can read a lot and talk a lot about growing cabbage, but you got to grow the cabbage. All of this means nothing unless we actually come together and work together and do things together. And so that last component is like the living experience of participating in a parish community group or homesteading yourself, and seeing how that works on your journey with Christ and your journey with faith, like how that how the experience of homesteading works. That I would say, like, that's part of what the experience of the Catholic land movement is. And so reading wise, start with Pope Leo the 13th. Go to the English distributists, mostly Belloc and Chesterton, and then move to IHS Press and the Catholic land movement books and the writings of Father Vincent McNabb, and you're going to be very, very primed to participate at that point.
I think I typed out my questions for the second half, the extra ones that came to my mind. So we'll tackle those on the second half of our webinar. We'll be exploring some more of the nuts and bolts of the Catholic land movement itself, and then I want to talk a little bit about agriculture as the basis for community, and revitalization of rural community on the second half of our webinar today. We've been very glad to have Mike Thomas with us of the Catholic land movement. It's been a joy to have him with us, and definitely, friends, check out the second half of this interview when it drops. I'm Pastor Christopher Maronde, Director of the Lutheran Institute of Regenerative Agriculture. Thank you so much, friends, for watching and listening, and please definitely pass this on to any who may be interested. Thank you so much. God's blessings.